Hi, this is Linda continuing our Explaining American English videos on building American English sentences. I did lesson 6A, now I'm doing lesson 6B about all 5 verb forms. And this is the chart that I showed you last time. I want to explain a little bit more about this one. Where I use the word anytime, it doesn't have to be there, but you can put this or some other words in an anytime sentence. So we're going to look at some other words that can go instead of anytime. Anytime is an adverb, which means it tells when or where or how about a verb, and sometimes it does that with other things besides verbs, but at least verbs. In this case, it is verbs. So what can we use instead of anytime? Here we have some other options or choices for anytime. These almost always go before the verb. Always, seldom, never, rarely. Although they don't actually say anytime, I'm not telling you when. Even when I say seldom, it could be future, present, past. Or if I say never, I'm talking about future, present, past. All of that is covered with these verbs. Rarely, which means not very often. Never, not at all. Always, seldom. And there are other words too, but this particular group I'm talking about almost always goes before the verb. For instance, he always goes to work early. I probably wouldn't say he goes always to work or he goes to work early always. It usually goes here. She never comes late. I could also say she seldom comes late or she rarely comes late. These almost always go before the verb. Then these almost always go after the verb. Anytime, which we've already seen, and a lot. Now this a lot has to do with how many times. There is also the a lot, which means a big amount. For instance, if I say I ate a lot, I probably mean I ate many bites of food. But it can also mean how many times, many, many times. Such as she walks a lot after work. But it still includes the idea of anytime, because if I say that, that means in the past, in the present, and the future, she's probably walking after work. They fall asleep anytime. This is the one we are already familiar with. But those two, and maybe a few more, almost always go after the verb. There are some that easily move around even more than that. And here are some examples of this. Some can go at the beginning, the middle, or end of a sentence. Often is an example. Occasionally, sometimes, a lot of times. When I put of times with it, then it has a unique use. So even these, I could be talking about now, past, present. A lot of times includes all of those. So I'm using it with the verb form number 1 that goes with any time. Now notice the places where it could go. Often, putting it first, I watch TV late at night. Or I could say, I often watch TV late at night. Or, I watch TV often late at night. I watch TV late at night often. Often floats. There are a few phrases I don't want to break up, and watch and TV go together, so I wouldn't put it in the middle there, but it can go in these places. Occasionally, I sleep late. I occasionally sleep late. I sleep late occasionally. Sometimes I look at YouTube. I sometimes look at YouTube. I look at YouTube sometimes. A lot of times, I take the bus to work. I a lot of times take the bus to work. I take the bus a lot of times to work. I take the bus to work a lot of times. So these phrases that could take the place of any time can sometimes go in many different places. Also, I wanted to tell you a little bit about future. I did the one about any time last time, and I added to it today. This one I didn't even introduce last time. This is about the future. What will happen in the future? And when we talk about the future, we always use the first or the plainest form of the verb, such as eat. He will eat a sandwich. I could say he shall eat or I shall eat a sandwich, but this is not common anymore. It used to be. Now we only use it when we're sort of mad. I shall eat a sandwich. You cannot stop me. So it's a stronger word than will, but it's not used very often in this situation. Okay. We also use going to talk about the future. This is an ing verb, which becomes the main verb with an infinitive, but we're going to put here the plain form of the verb, such as sleep. I am going to sleep. He is going to sleep. They are going to sleep. At the beginning, for my students, I only taught those two for future, but today I'm going to go a little bit farther. So another common one that works sort of like going to is about to. It's very common to do this. But about to suggests it's going to happen almost immediately. It's an immediate future. For instance, I might say, I am about to faint. It happens immediately after I say it. Or I could say, if you call me on the phone and I am sitting down at the table at that moment, I might say, I am about to eat. Let's talk later. So about to is the same as will or going to, except it suggests immediately this is going to happen in the future. And I have to add this one. In the South, we use fixing to or fixing to. And it's very common in the South in casual talk. But if you say it in the northern part of the United States or the middle part of the United States or probably on the West Coast or on the East Coast, native English speakers will laugh if you say fixing to. However, in the South, it's very common. The word fix has two meanings. It can be if something is broken and you put it back together, you repair it, you fix it. Or you can fix a meal, that means prepare. So fix can mean repair and it can mean prepare. And we use it in the prepare meaning in many situations. I am fixing to go to the store. If you say that in the North, they will laugh. He is fixing to take a break. They are fixing to go on vacation. People in the North don't say that. People in the South will say that sometimes. Okay, some sample sentences. I will cook tomorrow. You will sing tomorrow. It doesn't matter which one of these I use. It's just will and the plain form of the verb. And then if I want to, I can tell you the time. I am going to study soon, but if I'm almost ready to do it, I might say, I am about to study. So don't talk to me, I'm about to study. And if it's are, it's you or we or they are going to visit the doctor later, or you, we, they are about to go to the doctor. It means we're walking out the door. We're about to go to the doctor. He or she or it is going to read next week. We're going to read a book next week. Or if I say he or she or it is about to something, like it's about to leave the room. That means they're on their way out right now. One other mention about pronunciation. When speaking, this does not apply to writing, but when speaking, going to is pronounced gonna most of the time. I'm gonna read a book. I'm gonna cook breakfast. I'm gonna wash the dishes. That's the common way of saying is or are or am going to. Going to becomes gonna. But again, going to could be about to if it's going to happen right away, very soon. Okay, so that's an explanation of the future. Now I want to talk a little bit about a vague future, which we've mentioned before, but I want to review it quickly. For a vague or possible future, we put another word here instead of will. We can say, I can go, he could go, they may go, she might go, I would go. Now, shall, I've already mentioned, it is used in a question. Shall I go? Shall we go eat now? We use shall in the question. We don't use it so much in a statement, I shall go. But if we're asking, shall we, it's almost like, will we agree? Shall we go? So it's very common in a question. And then should, we should go. And then must, I must finish this book. It is so good. I must finish this book. So these are vague or possible future. And they're used with the first verb form. Now there's another word I decided to include, ought. I ought to finish the book. It probably means I'm not really interested in finishing the book, but I feel responsible, I feel pressure, I need to do this, so I ought to finish the book. And it's used the same way as these others in front of a plain form of the verb. I ought to finish, I ought to read, I ought to study. It's a more complicated grammar structure with the infinitive like going to was. Sometimes it is pronounced oughta, like gonna, oughta. I oughta study. I don't want to. I oughta go on a diet, but I don't want to. Okay, so these are some reminders of something we've already studied about future. So I covered other words besides anytime, and I talked about future, but they all use the first form of the verb. All of the verbs that we studied in the 5 forms, first form, second form, third form, fourth form, fifth form, we put these verb forms in this chart as we study. In my classes, the first thing we do at the beginning of every class is to pick a verb, we're doing irregular verbs, and put them in this chart quickly. We're getting faster and faster at it because we've done it so much, so it doesn't take long. But at first, it takes a while to get through the chart. We have anytime with the subject I, you, we, they, or this form, second form, he or she or it. And these are all regular verbs. How do I know they're regular verbs? Because ed, ed. In the past, specific, and in the past, general. So in the chart we had both of these 4 and 5 spaces would be taken up by this word. So I talk, he talks. We are talking, he talked yesterday, they have talked many times, or he has talked many times. No, I jump, he jumps, they are jumping, she jumped yesterday, they have jumped many times before. And again, P doesn't vibrate, so it's T. Visit. I visit, she visits, they are visiting, he visited yesterday, she has visited many times. And we say visited because this T is so close to D, we can't tell the difference, so we have to say ted, visited. Play, like you play very well. He plays the violin. They are playing a concert. She played chess yesterday. They have played chess many times. Here, Y vibrates, play. So it's decent. Played, talked, played, visited. Quick review of pronunciation. Okay, try. We have to change the Y to an I if there's a consonant before it. We didn't have to do that here because a vowel was before it. But try as a consonant. Try, tries, trying, tried, tried. They try to do that correctly. He tries to win. They are trying to study. He tried to make pancakes yesterday, but they burned. Okay. And they have tried many times to win the race. And then we have the word smile. It ends in an E, so all we do is add a D to it here and here. I smile when I watch the children play. He smiles at his friend. They are smiling while they play that game. He smiled at me yesterday. They have smiled at each other when they see each other on the street. They have smiled at each other many times. Okay, so this is a regular verb pattern. Now I'm going to stop the video and switch to irregular verbs. Now we have the irregular verb. And when little children start to speak English, they will sometimes try to make it a regular verb, and they'll say, I drawed a picture, he drived a car, but after a while they learn that these verbs are not regular. They do something strange in the fourth form and the fifth form. First, second, and third, regular and irregular, are alike. But when you get to forms 4 and 5, irregular verbs do their own thing. You never know. So, I eat, he eats, they are eating, he ate, they have eaten. And most of the time we're going to say eaten. We kind of swallow that instead of saying eaten, eaten. Okay. They speak English. He speaks Japanese. They are speaking Chinese. He spoke Korean. They have spoken in Russian. I write a letter. He writes a book. They are writing notes. She wrote a list yesterday. They have written several books. I drew a picture. She draws a number out of a hat. They are drawing beautiful flowers. He drew a house. They have drawn landscapes, pictures of the scenery outside many times. You drive a nice car. He drives an old car. They are driving fast. She drove down the street. They have driven for 3 days. I break pencils often. He breaks sticks to make a fire. They are breaking all records at the Olympics. She broke a glass. They have broken dishes in the kitchen many times. So these are irregular verbs, and these you have to memorize. And so to memorize them, we skip these two and we say eat, ate, eaten. Speak, spoke, spoken. Write, wrote, written. Draw, drew, drawn. Drive, drove, driven. Break, broke, broken. So if you're trying to learn one, if you say the first form and then the fourth and fifth, that's where you do the memorizing, because these are the same for all the verbs. That's the end of the verb part. So I promised an idiom, so here are two. I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. The visual is a rock and something hard like a wall, and you're caught between them and you can't move. So the meaning is, I have a situation where I have to make a choice. Do I do this or do I do that? I don't like either choice, but I must make a choice. So I'm caught between a rock, I don't like that idea, and a hard place. I don't like that idea either. So I have to choose. I'm caught. The other one is cut him or her some slack. Now, slack is when you have something that's pulled really tight, there's no slack. But if you loosen it a little, now there's some slack here. And I pull it tight and take out the slack. Here's slack, no slack. So I want to give someone or cut someone some slack. It means I'm not going to apply the rule strictly. You have been late to work, for instance, for 3 days this week. Normally, I would have to reduce your pay. However, I know that either your child has been sick or your car has been giving you problems, and this is not usual. So I will cut you some slack. I will not apply the rule strictly. I will go ahead and pay you the regular amount, even though you didn't fulfill the rule of coming the whole time all week. I will cut you some slack. We use this for any situation where you're not going to apply the strict rule or the strict reaction. You're going to go easy, show patience, show mercy to someone. You cut them some slack. Okay, that's the end of the video. I hope you find it helpful, and I will see you next time.